Thanks to advancements in forensic technology and genealogy testing, we are seeing more old mysteries being solved than ever before. From discovering the true name of the Lady of the Dunes to identifying the infamous I-65 killer, law enforcement, scientists, and other experts have been working hard to bring answers to some of the most grisly unsolved cases across the world. Join us for today's episode as we examine 4 chilling cold cases that were finally solved in 2024 to Rebecca and Sherry Bridgewater. Terry Becker, 20, was last seen on December 4, 1975, in Westminster, Colorado. At the time of her disappearance, she was hitchhiking to see her boyfriend at the Adams County Jail in Brighton, Colorado. Terry had grown up in Wyoming and moved to the state after graduating from high school. Her family described her as a free spirit who never met a stranger and would hold a conversation with anyone. 2 days after she left to see her boyfriend, though, her body was discovered in a field near 100th Avenue. She never made it to the jail. She'd been dumped along with her clothing and other personal possessions. A post-mortem revealed that her cause of death had been asphyxiation. She had been sexually assaulted before she was killed. For years, the identity of Teresa's killer evaded the police. And though her case was frequently reviewed by investigators, no new leads emerged. Then in 2003, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation extracted unknown male DNA from a piece of evidence from the scene. This was a huge breakthrough in the case, only possible thanks to the advancements in DNA technology. But it didn't lead the authorities to their killer, as he wasn't on their DNA database. The case was back at square one. Then in 2013, hopes were raised once again when it was discovered that the DNA from Terry's crime scene matched that from a separate crime being investigated in Las Vegas. The Las Vegas Metro Police were reviewing a cold case from 1991, the rape and murder of Sherry Bridgewater. Sherry had been found dead in her home in the 1000 block of West Monroe Avenue in May of that year. She was a 30-year-old mother at the time, and the killer had left her body positioned in a, quote, suspicious nature. Though investigators were able to establish that the same man had viciously assaulted and killed both Sherry and Thury, they still didn't have a name. Everything changed, however, in 2023 when the Colorado Bureau of Investigation enlisted the help of a genetic DNA lab and a genealogist company. With their aid, law enforcement managed to identify a suspect. The man was already deceased, but his body was exhumed for DNA testing. In February 2024, authorities announced that the cases of Sherry Bridgewater and Terry Becker were now closed, as they had established the identity of their killer as Thomas Martin Elliott, a career criminal who took his own life in 1991, some time after the Sherry Bridgewater murder. Elliott had spent his life in and out of the prison system. He spent time incarcerated for a vast array of crimes, including burglary and the sexual assault of a 13-year-old girl. This assault saw him convicted in 1981 and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Investigators believe that Elliott met Sherry while they both attended an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting shortly after his release from prison. Maria Lorraine Hansel. On the night of February 7, 1977, officers with the Colorado Springs Police Department were called to the scene of a possible suicide in the 5400 block of North Nevada Avenue. When they arrived, they discovered a gruesome sight. Maria Lorraine Hansel, a 14-year-old girl, had been viciously stabbed multiple times in the chest and neck, her body left on the floor of the master bedroom in a pool of blood. It was clear with one glance that this was no suicide. This was cold-blooded murder. Maria Hansel lived nearby. She had been babysitting for her neighbor's 2 children on the night of the murder. The neighbor noted that she had called the teenager earlier that night, and everything had been fine. But when she arrived home at 11:20 p.m., Maria was dead. The only silver lining was that the other children ages 6 and 8 were unharmed, asleep in their beds. Investigators were able to collect some interesting pieces of evidence from the scene, including blood from Maria's jumpsuit that wasn't hers. It was established as being male, but nothing further came of it in the next few decades. The horrific scene haunted investigators and locals for decades with no answers in sight until nearly 50 years passed. On May 8, 2024, the Colorado Springs PD announced that they'd finally established the identity of the man responsible for Maria's murder, William Charles Kernan Jr. Kernan had died in 2010 and had been cremated. And since he has no living relatives, investigators could not compare his DNA, but police are positive that Kernan was responsible for Maria's death. Kernan came to the attention of police in 2019 when they entered the DNA retrieved from the blood on Maria's jumpsuit into a public genetic genealogy database and compared it with other samples. At the time of the murders, Kernan was a university student and familiar with the woman Maria was babysitting for when she was killed. He had also been to the apartment complex several times before. Why he killed Maria is unknown, but at long last, Maria's family at least have some of the answers they've been looking for 47 years. Angel. As recently as 2021, news outlets were printing the tragic story of a Jane Doe baby dubbed Angel Baby Doe. A newborn found dumped on the side of the road in Johnson County, Texas. Angel Baby Doe was discovered by a local collecting litter along Briar Oaks Road between Alvarado and Burleson on November 18, 2001. The baby was wrapped in a jacket, the umbilical cord still attached. The Johnson County Sheriff's Office later disclosed the little girl had been born alive, but noted that the mother had failed to receive medical care after giving birth and hadn't clamped the umbilical cord, leaving the baby to bleed to death. Over the years, investigators received numerous leads about the true identity of Angel Baby Doe. Several persons of interest were identified and examined, but none of their leads had ever panned out. In 2021, the Johnson County Sheriff's Office submitted evidence to Othram, the genetic genealogy company, which allowed them to develop a DNA profile for the baby and subsequently compare it to the samples on their database. Othram, as part of a news release, stated, using this new information, a follow-up investigation was conducted, leading investigators to potential relatives of the infant. In June this year, investigators announced a break in the case. They had identified Angel Baby Doe's mother as 48-year-old Shelby Stotts and arrested her on a second-degree murder charge. Stotts was a paraprofessional at a high school at the time of her arrest, and she has declined to comment on the case in the months since. At this time, the circumstances of the baby's birth are unknown, as are the reasons why she subsequently abandoned the child. Linda Sue Childers, formerly known as Lorraine Stahl. In May of 1974, the Connecticut State Police received a tip about a double murder that had taken place in a derelict property on Shoeville Road in the town of Ledyard, about 55 miles east of New Haven. Officers responded to the scene on May 30th, where they discovered two shallow graves in the garden at the back of the house. The bodies were badly decomposed, but determined to be of one woman and one man. They had been fatally shot, and the anonymous tipster had stated that the killings occurred 4 years earlier on December 31, 1970. It wasn't long before investigators were able to identify the deceased man as Gustavus Lee Carmichael, a convicted criminal who had escaped from federal custody before his death. He was 25 in 1970 and had robbed numerous banks across the country. His latest crime had been stealing $60,000 from a New Jersey bank. But his criminal history was lengthy. He'd been convicted of all sorts of crimes, including breaking and entering, kidnapping, assault and battery, and grand larceny. Investigators believe that Carmichael met the woman he was killed alongside while on the run from the law. The perpetrators of the murders were soon caught. Richard DeFreitas and Donald Brands confessed to the murders after being questioned by police. Reportedly, the two men, plus a third, owned several safe houses which they used to hide escaped convicts from law enforcement. They'd also provided fugitives with false paperwork, identifying them as whatever new names they'd chosen for themselves. In 1970, DeFreitas had set up a safe house in Ledyard and provided paperwork to the couple who were using the names Dirk and Lorraine Stahl. However, DeFreitas grew concerned when his wife told him that Lorraine was worried about the lifestyle she and her boyfriend were leading. This led him to speak with Brandt, and they thought it was best to kill Lorraine out of the fear that she divulged their information to the police in an effort to get a better deal for herself and Carmichael. But when the two men went to confront Lorraine, Carmichael refused to let them kill her, so the two men killed them both instead and buried them on the property. Investigators concluded that Lorraine Stahl was not the true name of their Jane Doe, but they struggled to find answers. Inside the home, they found a phone book that she owned. It revealed that she'd made calls to various states across the country, including Tennessee, New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania, but this didn't help them find her name. At the scene, they also received a tan leather wet-look vest, a gold or tan sweater, a brown tweed skirt, and a pair of brown boots. She also wore a pendant and several rings, some with the letters JHSN and the initials ILN, as well as the date 1917 engraved inside. Another ring she had contained a fake emerald stone. For over 50 years, the real identity of Lorraine Stahl remained a mystery. But in July of 2022, authorities decided to send samples of her DNA to Off-Ram, which led them to find a family member, her sister. The woman's sister revealed that she had a daughter who provided them with a DNA sample so that investigators could be 100% sure. In March 2024, it was revealed that the name of the woman was Linda Sue Childers. She was 24 at the time of her death. And there you have the facts. Please leave a comment down below with your own thoughts and reactions. And remember to like this video and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.